Becky Sue Johnson never asked to be Miss Space Alabama 1995, but the sash came with a rodeo title and a free funnel cake. So she played along. She wore the rhinestones, practiced her pageant wave, and posed with a piglet for the county calendar. She figured that'd be the peak of her stardom. Then came the spaceship. It hovered above the gravel parking lot of Ricky's Big Rig Roundup, where country music blared, kids threw fireworks, and grown men deep-fried Oreos in oil, so old it had memory. That night, Becky Sue wore denim cutoffs and her lucky pink cowboy boots, sipping sweet tea and trying to ignore Clyde Jenkins, who was determined to impress her by arm wrestling his own cousin. No one saw the ship arrive, until the sky lit up like a bug zapper and the vast line of the earth stopped for one strange second. "Whoa, Nellie," Becky muttered, squinting up. "Is that a disco ball?" It was not. The Empire's scout vessel, the Chrono Leech, had been tasked with discreet biological extraction. Discreetness was not in its programming. It materialized 30 feet above Ricky's roof, humming with a menacing glow. Panic ensued. Clyde wet himself. Ricky screamed and hid behind a barbecue smoker. Becky Sue, annoyed, tipped her sunglasses down. Oh, for Pete's sake, not another UFO. She'd seen one back in '89, drunk on Fireball and moonlight. That one at least had the decency to stay airborne. A shaft of blue light slammed into the ground like the finger of God. It hit Becky square in the chest. She didn't scream. She just yelled, "Hold my tea," before disappearing into the sky like a reverse meteorite. Chrono Leech's captain, Commander Zal Thursday of the Zarnox Dominion, stood proud in the glowing chamber. 8 feet tall and covered in obsidian armor, he looked like the final boss of an old arcade game. He gestured to the control panel with a flourish. The specimen is acquired. A fine earth breeder queen. His second in command, a jellyfish-shaped being named Bartak, blinked skeptically. She appeared agitated. She displayed vocal dominance and localized social influence, Zal Thursday said. Classic traits of a pack alpha. She will serve the Empire's rejuvenation program well. You sure she's not just Southern? Zal Thursday ignored him and turned toward the specimen chamber. Inside, Becky Sue sat on a metal bench, arms crossed, face set like someone just told her Walmart ran out of ranch dressing. "Y'all seriously picked the wrong chick," she muttered. The chamber door hissed open. Zal Thursday stepped forward, voice grandiose. "You are honored. You have been chosen." Becky tilted her head. "Chosen for what, exactly?" "Because I got curlers in my bag, and if this is a prank, I swear I'll start swinging." Bartak whispered to Zal Thursday. "Why is she not trembling in awe?" Zal Thursday cleared his throat. "You have been selected as a prime fertile entity for the Galactic Rebreeding Initiative." "Oh, hell no," Becky said, standing. "Y'all ain't even bought me dinner. We do not understand Earth courtship protocols." "Yeah, no kidding." She looked around the room, noting the blinking panels, glowing screens, and suspicious lack of exits. The ship hummed, the floor slightly sticky, like someone spilled cosmic soda and never cleaned it. Bartak cautiously slid a tray into the room. "We present food for comfort. Your traditional meal." Becky looked down. A can of spray cheese, beef jerky, and a Twinkie. "You got this from a gas station, didn't you?" "It was analyzed from your cultural repository, Truck Stop Weekly." She picked up the Twinkie and threw it at the wall. It didn't explode so much as bounce, then slowly ooze. "I'm gonna need a real meal, a real explanation, and real answers, starting with what the hell is going on." Zal Thursday bristled. "You are a guest aboard the flagship of the Zarnox Empire. Your cooperation is expected. Failure to comply will result in..." "In what? You gonna ground me? I once told off a preacher and won a pie-eating contest in the same hour, buddy. Try me." Bartak leaned in, whispering. "Is this normal?" "No," Zal Thursday said, stepping back, suddenly unsure. She is not responding to fear stimuli. She just stabbed the chair with a bobby pin. She is clearly defective." Inside her mind, Becky Sue was anything but calm. But a trick she'd learned long ago, when being the only girl with grit in a family full of loud men, was to never let them see you sweat. She was scared, sure, but scared never solved a damn thing. Back on Earth, 37 seconds after Becky's abduction, a klaxon sounded in an underground bunker in South Dakota. A red light spun to life. In the middle of a room filled with ancient monitors and two vending machines, both out of order, a man known only as Duke Rainer sat up from his recliner. Hot damn. They finally did it. Duke had a mullet like a lion's mane, a gut that screamed beer and barbecue, and a glare that could curdle milk. He'd retired from Earth's Special Defense Unit 15 years ago after the government claimed aliens don't exist. He didn't take it personally. He just installed better satellites on his roof. He pulled a lever. The vending machines rotated, revealing an arsenal of weapons behind them, including a plasma shotgun named Charlene. Computer, confirm signal. A robotic voice crackled. Unidentified spacecraft. Human female extracted. Location, Alabama. Duke grinned. They took one of ours. Poor bastards. He grabbed a duffel bag, stuffed it with gear, and kicked the recliner one last time. Time to dust off the boots. The universe had a rule. A big, flashing, neon-in-the-sky kind of rule. Every race knew it. Every empire, every wandering species, every rogue trader. It was in the Galactic Handbook, right between do not provoke the space whales and never trust a species with more than 6 elbows. Rule number 1, don't touch the Earth's women. Not because of chivalry, not because of cultural respect. Because if you did, Earth would come for you. With duct tape, rage, and a total disregard for physics. The Empire had forgotten the rule. Or maybe they'd never learned it. Either way, they were about to find out. Back aboard the Chrono Leech, Becky had broken into the ship's bathroom and was now using a curling iron, somehow smuggled in her purse, to threaten a technician. I swear on my Meemaw's grave, if y'all don't take me home right now, I'm gonna turn this place into a Waffle House after midnight. Zal Thursday watched on the security screen, increasingly disturbed. Why is she attacking our plumbing unit? She believes it alive, Bartak replied. Honestly, she might be right. That thing's been weird since Sector 5. The ship lurched. Sirens flared. Proximity alert, a mechanical voice blared. Zal Thursday rushed to the command deck. Who dares intercept us? On the monitor, a small human shuttle approached. Patchwork and clearly handmade. Painted across the hull were the words, Freedom Spanker. Inside, Duke adjusted his aviators. Becky, honey, hold tight. Uncle Duke's bringing the thunder. Becky, still wrestling with an alien bidet, paused and looked out the tiny window. Well, butter my biscuits, he actually came. Back on the bridge, Bartak stared at the incoming ship. That vessel's hull is reinforced with old truck parts. And is that a mixtape playing? Duke had queued up Eye of the Tiger. He didn't need stealth. He wanted them to hear him coming. Zal Thursday squinted at the Earthship. This is unconventional. The defense systems hummed. Duke loaded Charlene and cracked his knuckles. Y'all touched the wrong woman. The final shot of the section. The Freedom Spanker crashes through the docking bay, sparks flying, fire in its wake. Duke steps out, chewing gum, shotgun on his back, Walkman strapped to his hip. Becky, watching through the glass, smiled for the first time. Now it's a party. Duke Rainer didn't believe in stealth. He believed in impact. That's why the Freedom Spanker crash-landed directly into the docking bay of the Chrono Leech, sparking chaos and alarm klaxons. The moment the bay doors burst open and smoke hissed out like a dragon's breath, every alien on board froze, weapons aimed. And then Duke stepped through. He was clad in ripped jeans, a sleeveless leather vest, and a pair of mirrored aviators that hadn't seen the inside of a sunglass case since Desert Storm. A Walkman clipped to his belt blared bad to the bone as he casually chewed a toothpick, a pump-action plasma shotgun slung over one shoulder like a lazy reminder of impending doom. Howdy, you glow-in-the-dark jackwagons, he drawled. Unhand the lady, or I redecorate this place in fluorescent green. One of the Zarnox enforcers raised a plasma lance. Duke fired first. The blast sent the creature hurtling into a wall, limbs twitching. The others hesitated. Good call, Duke said, cracking his knuckles. In the command chamber, Commander Zal Thursday slammed his fists on the console. Who is this barbarian? Bartak analyzed the data pouring in. He's listed in the ancient Earth records as former gas station manager, conspiracy theorist, and demolition hobbyist. Why does his ship have fuzzy dice? I believe it is a symbol of challenge in Earth culture. Zal Thursday growled, "Deploy the Wraith Guard. Now." Meanwhile, Duke stalked through the halls, pausing only to punch a vending machine until it dropped a cold soda. He popped it open, took a long drink, and kept walking. Behind him strode Tamika Jackson, her hair perfectly coiled despite the zero gravity, her heels clicking with lethal intent. Tamika hadn't wanted to come. She had a good thing going back in Tallahassee, a DMV supervisor with benefits and a reputation for reducing grown men to tears over license renewal forms. But Becky was her cousin too, and when Duke called, she'd said, "You owe me gas money," and packed a purse full of pain. Her weapon of choice? A titanium folding chair. Reinforced, balanced, monogrammed. "So this the plan?" she asked as she adjusted her hoop earrings. "Stomp around and shoot anything that sparkles?" "Yup," Duke replied. "You brought the chair?" Tamika smirked. "Baby, the chair brought me." Behind them was Dr. Rick Sanchezberg, Earth's foremost UFO expert, tinfoil hat theorist, and a man vindicated after decades of ridicule. His wide eyes gleamed with barely contained excitement as he snapped photos of everything with an old Polaroid camera. This is it," he whispered. "Finally. Proof. Aliens. Abduction. Conspiracy. Sentient slime trails." "Rick," Tamika said without looking back, "touch anything that glows, and I'm feeding you to it." They reached a sealed door. Duke glanced at the control panel, then raised his boot and kicked it clean off its hinges. Inside, Becky Sue sat on a chair with one leg up, surrounded by unconscious alien guards and a half-assembled laser hair curler she'd been attempting to rewire into a weapon. "Y'all are late," she said, standing. Duke looked her up and down. "You all right, darlin'? I've been kidnapped, insulted, and offered dehydrated corn dogs." "So no, Duke, I am not all right." Becky stormed forward, smacking Duke on the arm. "You bring my flip-flops?" Duke handed her a pair of sparkly sandals. "Saved them from the barbecue pit. I knew I could count on you." Bartak watched the security feed with fascination. "They appear to be arguing." "They are dysfunctional," Zal Thursday said, though his voice was uncertain. "This is weakness." "Commander," Bartak replied, eyes wide, "that woman subdued for guards with a curling iron and hot sauce packet." Zal Thursday rubbed his temples. "Summon the Wraith Guard immediately." In the hall, lights dimmed. Sirens pulsed. Duke raised an eyebrow. "That ain't good." Down the corridor came the Empire's elite, 10-foot monstrosities clad in void black armor, eyes glowing like dying suns. They moved silently, weapons drawn, each one genetically enhanced for war and cruelty. Tamika cracked her neck. "Duke, I swear, if one of those things messes up my hair." "You get the chair," Becky finished. The Wraith Guard charged. Duke opened fire, shots exploding like miniature suns. Becky ducked under a swing, slammed a fist into a control panel, and redirected a force field just in time to slam one of the guards into the ceiling. Tamika, true to form, spun her folding chair and launched it like a discus. It caught a wraith square in the head, flattening its helmet and sending it spiraling into a wall. Rick cowered behind a supply crate. "I didn't sign up for combat. I'm a researcher." Duke tossed him a plasma pistol. "Congratulations, you're promoted." The fight raged like an 80s action movie on fast forward. One-liners flew. Bodies flew faster. At one point, Becky surfed a hover cart into a guard and flipped him into a cryo chamber. When the dust settled, 7 wraiths were groaning piles of armor and sparks. The rest fled. Duke wiped his forehead. Well, that was energizant. Rick emerged from behind the crate, covered in alien goo and grinning. This is the greatest day of my life." Tamika dusted off her chair. "Bet your DMV line don't seem so scary now." The ship shuddered violently. Zal Thursday's voice echoed through the intercom. "Humans, you have violated the sovereign domain of the Zarnox Empire. Surrender immediately or be atomized." Becky stepped up to the console. "No thanks, Chandelier Head." There was a long pause. "You dare mock the supreme voice?" Duke clicked on the intercom. She dared. I double-dared her. A blast rocked the ship. Outside, the Freedom Spanker, now remotely piloted, had begun firing on the hull. Inside, emergency protocols kicked in. The self-destruct countdown began. Rick screamed. That's bad, right? Self-destruct is bad. Only if you're not us, Duke replied, grabbing the helm controls. Tamika, get us back to the shuttle. Becky, sabotage whatever's keeping us here. Becky scanned the interface. Give me a second. These controls are in Squid. Rick leaned over reading. Actually, it's Zarnoxian script. It's got parallels to Texan cursive. Becky blinked. That explains a lot. With Rick's help, she shut down the gravity lock, forcing the entire corridor into a tilt. The group ran, slipping and sliding down the hallway like a bobsled team from hell. Behind them, automated defenses fired blindly, missing every shot by just enough to seem like a bad arcade machine. They reached the Freedom Spanker, hurling themselves through the bay doors as the chrono leech buckled. The human ship disengaged and launched into the void, engines roaring like a drag race at Daytona. Inside the cockpit, alarms were still blaring, but Rick was cackling with glee. Becky was digging a French fry out of her boot, and Tamika was already applying lip gloss. Duke piloted with one hand, the other holding a can of beer. Becky looked around, dusted, bruised, and furious. I swear, next time someone beams me up without permission, I'm starting an intergalactic lawsuit. Rick held up a data core he'd swiped. I have everything. Maps, coordinates, their command protocols, recipes. Wait, why do they have a file on Elvis? Tamika grunted. Because even aliens know the king never died. They sat in silence for a moment as the stars slipped by. Y'all realize we just declared war, right? Becky asked. Duke cracked his neck. Nah, they declared it when they touched the hair. She grinned. Damn right. The camera would have panned out here if this were a movie, to show the chrono leech exploding behind them in a fireball of alien tech and bad decisions. But instead, Duke flipped a switch and the ship's stereo crackled. Y'all ready for the mixtape? Becky rolled her eyes. Lord help us. And from the speakers came the unmistakable beat of We're Not Gonna Take It. The ship disappeared into the stars, earthbound. But war was already brewing, and the universe wasn't ready. The Freedom Spanker hurtled through hyperspace, its hull vibrating with a rhythm that matched the beat of Duke's 80s mixtape. A busted speaker crackled in the corner, while the smell of engine grease and bacon-scented air freshener filled the cabin. Earth was hours away, but the war they'd accidentally started wasn't waiting for a formal invitation. Becky Sue leaned over the console, staring at the holographic map projected by Rick's stolen Zarnoxian data core. Her hair, now tied back with a pink scrunchie, framed a face that had seen too much nonsense in too little time. They're mobilizing, she muttered, tapping the glowing lines. Zarnox war fleets. 3, maybe 4. Headed straight for Earth. Tamika, flipping through a galactic database on her cracked tablet, didn't even look up. Told y'all this would happen when you didn't read the user agreement. Rule number 1 was in bold. Rick, legs bouncing nervously as he stared at the data feed, added, They've declared full-scale cultural purification. They think we're a contamination. Duke grunted, finishing off a Slim Jim with a defiant crunch. That's funny, 'cause we were just getting started. The ship lurched as the NAV system flagged a transmission. Bartak's face appeared, floating in a transparent blue hologram. His eye stalks drooped. Humans, this is not a negotiation. It is a courtesy call. You've insulted our empire, damaged our flagship, and violated ancient space laws. Becky leaned in. Y'all violated us first. You stole a woman in the middle of a chili cook-off. Regretful, yes. But the consequences now are beyond diplomacy. Earth has been designated a containment zone. Our forces will sterilize it within 3 rotations. Duke stepped forward, lifting his mirrored sunglasses. If you think you're waltzing into our backyard without a fight, you ain't never seen a redneck cookout gone sideways. Bartak's eyes blinked asynchronously. We are dispatching our finest. They are elite, enhanced, and incapable of failure. You are, how do you say it, hill people? Damn right, Tamika said, standing. And we don't play fair. The hologram blinked out. Rick paled. We've got, what, 2 hours before they hit the moon? Hour and a half, Becky corrected. Maybe less if they use that wormhole shortcut near Saturn. Guess we better roll out the welcome mat. By the time the Freedom Spanker returned to Earth's orbit, things had changed. Human satellites, decommissioned decades ago, had begun blinking online. Strange old radio towers on mountaintops lit up. Buried command bunkers unsealed. Across the globe, people with peculiar pasts, conspiracy theorists, retired special ops, and southern grandmas with suspiciously advanced CB radios, were gearing up. Duke landed the ship on an abandoned Air Force base in Arkansas. Half the runway had weeds growing through it. The other half was cleared by a welcome party of survivalists in camo and flip-flops. Thought y'all were a myth, said a barrel-chested man with a beer belly and an M60. But then we saw the live stream of Becky breaking that alien's nose with a curling iron. Figured it was go time. Weapons? Duke asked. The man grinned. We got shotguns, saw blades, lawnmowers, RC trucks strapped with dynamite, and about 100 gallons of moonshine if things get desperate. Perfect, Duke said. Let's meet em head on. In orbit, the Zarnox Empire deployed its ground invasion unit, the Sun Talons. They were massive, genetically perfected, plated in radiant armor that shimmered like molten gold. Trained from embryo to slaughter, they'd conquered 70 planets in the last cycle alone. The first wave landed in Tennessee. Within 4 minutes, their lead commander was defeated by a waffle iron, a rigged deer stand, and an elderly woman named Maureen who wielded a chainsaw while blasting guns and roses from a jukebox in her pickup truck. By the time the Sun Talons moved into Alabama, they were scared. And they had reason to be. Duke, Becky, Tamika, and Rick led the countercharge outside Birmingham, where the open field became a makeshift battlefield. They set up camp behind a wall of pickup trucks, armed drones built from repurposed crop dusters buzzing above them. What's the play? Tamika asked, tapping her boot impatiently. Duke holstered Charlene. Distraction. Chaos. Rage. Becky handed Tamika a bullhorn. And attitude. Rick pulled out a custom-built EMP slingshot. I've also got a few tricks. The sky turned red as Zarnox dropships arrived, fanning out in a perfect V formation. On the ground, their soldiers stood in militant rows, all identical in size, armor, and emotionless faces. Becky stepped onto the hood of a pickup and addressed them with the bullhorn. Welcome to Earth, boys. You look like you missed a few leg days. The front line blinked, confused. She continued. Now, I know y'all think you're hot stuff with your fancy armor and your we've never lost a war attitude. But here's the thing. We invented drive-thrus, monster trucks, and wrestling. So you better be ready to throw down. One of the aliens stepped forward, raising a pulsating cannon. Duke fired first, blasting the cannon out of its hands. That was the cue. RC trucks rigged with fireworks darted into the alien ranks, exploding in spectacular fashion. Redneck soldiers poured from the tree line, yelling like banshees, wielding weed whackers, baseball bats, and power tools. Tamika charged with her folding chair spinning like a war drum. Rick lobbed EMP grenades, disabling comms and stunning entire squads. Becky, in her cutoffs and tank top, led the charge with a flare gun and a cattle prod, yelling, "Y'all messed with the hair, now you get the chair." It was a glorious, chaotic mess. Aliens tried to maintain formations, but were undone by booby traps, tripwires, swinging tires, and a remote-control porta-potty filled with skunks. In the middle of the battlefield, Duke took on one of the Sun Talon commanders in hand-to-hand combat. The alien struck with precision. Duke responded with a tire iron to the kneecap. The alien roared, shocked. "You fight without honor." "We fight to win," Duke replied, and suplexed the alien into a kiddie pool filled with motor oil. Tamika fought her way through 3 elites before being cornered by a towering brute with dual plasma axes. "Any last words, female?" it hissed. She smiled sweetly. "Yeah, duck." The brute turned just in time for Becky to hit it full force, with a hay bale loaded into a trebuchet. It flew 30 feet before crashing into an outhouse. Teamwork, baby, Becky shouted. Rick, somewhere behind a barricade of tractor tires, yelled over the comms. They're calling in reinforcements. Their mothership just decloaked above us. Everyone looked skyward. It was massive. A floating city of death and design. The Zarnox Empire's crown jewel. The eternal clam. Duke narrowed his eyes. Looks like a fancy blender. We can't shoot it down with bottle rockets, Rick said. That thing's got shield generators older than our Constitution. Then we take the fight to it, Becky said. Tamika stared. You want to storm an alien mothership? Mid-battle? With lawn chairs and country music. Becky handed her a stolen alien keycard. Sweetie, I'm Miss Space Alabama. I got a reputation to uphold. Duke tapped his Walkman. Let's rock. The four of them piled into the Freedom Spanker, engines roaring, smoke billowing from a tailpipe, and blasted upward into the fire-streaked sky. Behind them, the battlefield echoed with the sound of Earth's unconventional might, banjos, explosions, and laughter. The invasion had turned into a full-on Southern festival of defiance. And the mothership was next. As they disappeared into the clouds, Tamika muttered, "We better survive this. I left lasagna in the oven." Becky grinned. "Don't worry. We're just getting warmed up." The Freedom Spanker vanished into the stars once more, heading straight for the heart of the Empire's pride. The final battle was coming, and this time it was personal. The Freedom Spanker pierced the upper atmosphere like a rebellious comet, its hull rattling under pressure it was never designed to endure. Inside, the cabin was lit with red emergency lights, duct-taped wiring, and the faint glow of vengeance. Tamika buckled herself in with one hand while reapplying lip gloss with the other. "I can't believe we're doing this," she muttered. Storming a galactic mothership with a ship held together by chewing gum and spite. "Spite's the main engine," Duke grunted from the pilot seat, flipping switches that hadn't been labeled in a decade. "And duct tape's our co-pilot." Becky Sue stood behind them, arms crossed, jaw set like a woman who just found her boyfriend at Hooters with her sister. They're gonna learn today. Above them loomed the Eternal Clam, the Zarnox Empire's largest war vessel, now hanging in orbit like a giant neon jellyfish of doom. It bristled with weapons, spikes, and what looked like 4,000 rotating antennas pointed at Earth. The ship had never been boarded in its history. The Empire didn't even believe it could be. Rick clutched his satchel of alien tech and shivered. "Statistically, we should already be vaporized." "Statistically," Becky said, "you talk too much." The Freedom Spanker dipped low, skimming along the surface of the mothership, slipping under the sensors using nothing more than an old analog switchboard and a prayer. Duke found an airlock that looked abandoned, probably because no one expected entry from a ship that ran on gasoline and rage. He locked in the manual docking clamps. "All right, kids," he said, cocking Charlene the shotgun. "Let's teach these glowworms what Earth hospitality looks like." The hatch opened with a hiss and a belch of stale alien air. The hallway beyond was pristine, clinical, and humming with artificial calm. It didn't last. Tamika was the first through, her chair swinging low like a knight's sword. Rick followed with a portable EMP launcher duct-taped to a fishing rod. Becky stormed through dead center, her boots echoing with righteous fury. They met resistance fast. The Empire's internal defense bots surged forward, mechanical spiders with plasma fangs and electric limbs. But they weren't ready for Earth tactics. Duke dropped a smoke grenade filled with bacon grease and glitter. Becky kicked one into a wall, while Tamika body-slammed another with a suplex straight out of Monday Night Raw. Rick screamed and ran in a circle until he accidentally triggered the EMP slingshot, disabling the rest. He blinked at the results. That was entirely intentional. They pushed deeper floor by floor, blasting through security checkpoints with a combination of brute force, stolen access cards, and high school cafeteria-level chaos. Each fight escalated, but so did their determination. Somewhere inside this oversized blender of arrogance and chrome was the Empire's Supreme Council, and the backup copy of their self-destruct protocol. The main chamber was at the heart of the ship, a colossal room ringed in obsidian glass and filled with 12 towering Zarnox Council members. In the center sat the supreme voice, Zodrath the Infinite, a being older than Earth's continents, currently draped in robes made from solar silk and humming with psionic energy. Zodrath watched as the humans kicked in the ceremonial doors and marched in like they owned the place. "This is madness," he boomed. "No," Duke replied, cocking his shotgun. "This is Alabama." Becky stepped forward, flipping her hair back with a level of poise reserved for beauty queens and courtroom dramas. "You broke rule number 1, she said. "You touched an Earth woman. Worse, you didn't apologize. And honey, that just won't do." Zodrath sneered. "You're primitives. You think your sticks and toys can overpower millennia of rule and control." "We don't need to overpower it," Tamika said. "We just need to expose it." Rick pulled the data core from his bag and slotted it into the central console. The entire chamber lit up with projection. Old files, forgotten treaties, and archived warnings filled the air. Zodrath's face froze. Projected high above the chamber, a document appeared, signed, sealed, and galactically notarized in 1977. By order of the Galactic Accords, Rick read aloud, Earth was granted sovereign status under the Terran Exception Clause, following a series of, quote, extremely unreasonable retaliatory responses involving soda machines, country music, and unexplained explosions. Becky's smile was pure Southern steel. "That means your empire violated your own treaty. We're not the problem. You are." Zodrath's voice shook with fury. That clause was buried, redacted, hidden by 1,000 bureaucratic black holes. "Shoulda read the fine print," Tamika said. The council erupted in panic. The treaty meant their war declaration was illegal. Their occupation of Earth? Grounds for intergalactic sanctions. Worse, it meant Earth could now invoke Clause 12, right to retributive mayhem. "I say we invoke it," Becky said, glancing at Duke. "I second that," Duke replied, raising Charlene. "I third it," Rick added, loading another EMP grenade. Tamika just pointed at the council members. "Y'all gonna want to duck." Becky slammed her palm on the console, activating the clause. The system chimed. Clause 12 acknowledged. Retributive mayhem authorized. Above them, the eternal clam began rumbling. Lights flickered. Engines reversed polarity. Automated turrets spun in confusion, targeting their own power cores. Floors shifted. Elevator music blared. "This place is coming apart," Rick shouted. "We triggered the failsafe." "Let's blow this popsicle stand," Duke said, leading the way out. They raced through the collapsing corridors, ducking debris and dodging confused guards. Becky carried the treaty copy like a holy relic, grinning wildly. Back on the Freedom Spanker, the engines roared to life just as the mothership began to crack down the middle like a dropped disco ball. As they punched into space, a series of explosions lit the sky behind them, each one brighter than the last. The eternal clam shattered, imploding with the weight of its own bureaucracy. Inside the ship, everyone caught their breath. Tamika leaned back, her chair across her lap, lipstick unscathed. "So what now?" Rick asked, looking at the treaty. Becky leaned over, tapping the last paragraph. "They're forced to issue an apology, galactic-wide, on record, in all known languages." Duke grinned. "Good. Let the whole galaxy know Earth ain't the backwater hayfield they thought it was." Becky pulled out a stick of gum, popped it into her mouth, and looked out the viewport. The stars stretched ahead like open road. "And next time," she said, "maybe they'll think twice before putting hands on a woman with a southern drawl and a grudge." As Earth came into view, the first wave of apology broadcasts echoed across frequencies, in high-pitched chirps, low wail songs, and even unintelligible screeches. But the human translation said it best. "To the beings of Earth, we sincerely apologize for violating rule number 1. We have learned our lesson." Back in Alabama, the signal played on every radio, every screen. Becky smiled. Duke cracked a beer. Tamika lifted her chair in salute. Rick cried happy tears. And somewhere out in the stars, every galactic empire paused. They all read the fine print. Twice.